Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me begin by congratulating the Honorable Lady and for bringing this special motion and in asking me to second it. Honorable Speaker, AGOA was actually supposed to substitute aid because for a very long time, African countries had been arguing that we should move from aid to trade. And it had been very difficult for the African countries who are mainly producing raw materials and agricultural goods to access the world's biggest economy, which was the US market. Because of various trade barriers or restrictive measures that were in place in that economy. And for a long time, Africans, instead of walking around the Western world with begging bowls, they were asking that the trade environment be made favorable so they could export more into the American market. Because what they were facing were tariffs, high taxes, high levies on their imports, but also subsidies on the American local goods that would make the African imports less competitive. And there were also quotas. Africans were being restricted to quotas, quantitative restrictions as to how much they could export. And there were also non-tariff barriers, regulations and quality standards that would make it very difficult to sell into the American market. So over the years, Africans agitated within the multilateral framework that we should focus more on trade and not aid. So in 2000, the US Congress enacted the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which was supposed to give more access to the US market for African-produced goods. They have something they call generalized system of preference programs, which allows about 5,000 African goods to enter the American market. But under AGOA, an additional 1,800 products were added, mostly on from the extractive industry, but as well as the agricultural and textile and apparel. And the difference is amazing. In the 25 years that AGOA has been in place, the imports or the trade volumes between Africa and US have grown 500%. In fact, at the peak, it would be about $12 billion a year. And cumulatively, it came to about 1% of the US global trade, which was quite significant. And the leading African countries, of the 34 that have been participating in AGOA, South Africa was number 1, the top 5. Nigeria was 2, Ghana was 3, Kenya was actually number 4, followed by Madagascar and Angola. And Kenya, at the peak, exported about $650 million, mainly apparel and textiles, out of here, employing 66,000 people. That is what is at stake here. Now, President Clinton, because of the usual local politics, gave it a lifespan of 15 years from 2000. And remember, in 2009, Kenya actually hosted the AGOA forum here. And then 15 years after inception, it was extended for another 10 years. And it is now coming to an abrupt end. Okay, we knew about it. But I say abrupt because what has shocked me, I've not heard of a transition plan by the Kenya government. What will they do when AGOA comes to an end in about a week's time? What will they do with 66,000 people employed in those industries that have benefited from AGOA? And to make matters worse, I've not even heard the East African Union, the East African Community, I've not heard COMESA, I've not heard African Union as a collective talk about this. And we all know that world trade, bilateral negotiations by individual African countries will take you nowhere. It is a multilateral system that works for Africa and the developing countries. So the first thing we would really want to hear from the government is, what is the transition plan? What are they going to do with all these people who are going to lose their jobs, the companies that are going to be closed? Because we should have thought about this much, much deeply and acted quickly and decisively. And today, we are experiencing commercial diplomacy in the US. There's a new administration that does not seem to believe in multilateralism much. And I'm very confident they are not paying a lot of attention to this. But as Africans, I think we need to find a way of insisting on this. And also impress upon the US that AGOA was a very useful soft diplomatic tool for them because of the things that came about with it. As part of the eligibility conditionalities, countries were required to enhance, good governance, support human rights, combat poverty, eliminate trade barriers for US goods as well, combat corruption, and practice political pluralism. Without AGOA, all these soft tools for US foreign policy will go away. And I'm also worried that the more jobs we lose in Africa, the more immigration crisis will emanate, because more people, human beings, will tend to follow the money. And the US may think winding up AGOA and causing massive job losses in Africa will not affect them. But the reality is that there'll be a lot of economic migration to the Western Hemisphere. And they need to look at this very keenly. And if you also look at it from the American perspective, it has benefited the economy substantially. So it is a two-way traffic. But we seem to be coming on it too late in the day. But I think we should not just let AGOA collapse without an alternative or without a transition. So I strongly support this motion, and hopefully that the government on its own here will give us a transition plan for AGOA fairly soon as to what we will do with 66,000 people who are going to lose jobs, factories that are going to be closed, and the instability, the economic and social instability that will come with that. Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.